Ow. Now, let's get to the real business. The Pentagon Papers. What? Wrong decade? Well then, let's talk about the Iran hostage. Wait. So you're telling me that most of the Iran hostage crisis occurred in the 80s and not the 70s? Then what are we talking about then? Oh, Watergate. I mean, I guess. It's not like the Watergate scandal completely shocked the American legal system and media to its core, right? Oh, it did? Wait, so you're telling me that two men, Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, took a stand and helped uncover a corruption scandal so big that the President of the United States and many of his top aides were involved in it? And even though they faced many critics and obstructions by the US government, they managed to publish multiple newspaper stories before any other major news agency was even interested or even heard of the scandal? On June 17, 1972, a burglary occurred at the Democratic National Committee headquarters. Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward, two journalists from the Washington Post, spent months combing over mounds of evidence related to the break-in. Taking a stand against their critics and the government, they eventually published stories that led to the resignation of President Nixon, as well as many top presidential aides, which ushered in politics and investigative journalism to the modern age. We'll come back to them in a second. First, let's set the stage. This is the Watergate complex. On June 17, 1972, Bernard L. Barker, James W. McCord, along with 3 other accomplices, broke into an office located here. At the time, it didn't seem too important as the complex holds many different offices for many different businesses and organizations. However, the 5 men didn't break into any other office with any other equipment. Barker, McCord, and the rest of the gang broke into the National Democratic headquarters with highly specialized equipment, which included bugging devices. They planned on bugging the office of Democratic National Committee Chairman Lawrence O'Brien. The men also attempted to photograph documents in the office, as some contained confidential financial and personal information about possible Democratic presidential candidates. It wouldn't be apparent until later in Bernstein and Woodward's investigation that this was done to gain information on Nixon's opponents for the approaching election year. Of the 5 men, 3 were native Cubans, 1 was a former employee of the CIA, and another helped train Cuban exiles for the Bay of Pigs invasion. Man, you could smell the corruption from here. No, wait, it's my casserole. Bernard L. Barker, one of the 5 men arrested for breaking into the Watergate complex, had a $25,000 cashier's check deposited into his bank account. The check was addressed to none other than Kenneth H. Dahlberg, Nixon's campaign finance chairman. James W. McCord, the man who identified himself as a former FBI and CIA agent, was also a former security chief to the Nixon Committee and a former security consultant for the Republican National Committee. Oh no, it's gonna lasagna too. It would later be uncovered that the burglary incident was part of a massive campaign of sabotage and spying done for Nixon's re-election. It was directed by the CRP, or CREEP, which stands for the Committee for the Re-election of the President. It was directed by the CRP and White House officials. Large portions of Nixon's campaign fund was set aside to discredit and disrupt individual Democratic nominees and their campaign rallies. The FBI said the Nixon campaign would follow members of the Democratic candidates' families, forge letters and distribute them under the candidate's name, leak manufactured and false items to the press, put campaign schedules in disarray, investigate the lives of dozens of Democratic campaign workers, and take confidential campaign files. The White House directed all comments to a spokesman for the CRP, who went on to discredit the story. He said, "The Post story is not only fiction, but a collection of absurdities." Donald H. Segretti tried to recruit many lawyers to spy on the Democrats. He would offer them jobs in the government when Nixon won the re-election and assured them that money would not be a problem. Now, back to our journalists. Bernstein and Woodward, remember them? Faced numerous opponents to their stories from the government and other news agencies. When Bernstein recalled John N. Mitchell, the Attorney General of the United States from 1969 through 1972, to ask him for a quote on a story that we published the next day that would implicate him in the burglary, he responded by threatening the Washington Post publisher Kathy Graham with, "Are you going to run this? If you are, Kathy Graham's tit is going to get caught in a ringer." Nixon was willing to spend $5 million left in his campaign treasury to destroy the Post in his Oval Office recording.
I want it clearly understood that from now on, ever, no reporter from the Washington Post is ever to be in the White House. Is that clear? Absolutely. Unless it's a press conference. Yes, sir. Now, briefings here, but not a briefing. But never in the White House. No church service. Nothing that Mrs. Nixon does. You tell Connie, don't tell Mrs. Nixon, because she'll approve it. No reporter from the Washington Post is ever to be in the White House again, and no photographer either. No photographer, is that clear? Yes, sir. None ever to be in. Now, that is a total order, and if necessary, I'll fire you.
During Woodward's and Bernstein's investigation, many potential sources pleaded with them to leave. Some include, "Please leave before they see you." And this one, "I know you're only trying to do your job, but you don't realize the pressure we're under. Please go." People who were part of the scandal or who happened to hear of it were so scared to talk to Bernstein and Woodward that they thought it would be risking their lives to even speak or mention it. Many news agencies often made fun of the Post's persistence to write and publish these stories, but if it wasn't for the Post, and more specifically Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward keeping the story alive, the FBI and the Senate may have never done investigations into the scandal. Perhaps it's been a little cute scandalous bow. Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein's legacy is important for American and world history, for they were the first celebrity journalist where the reporter becomes the story. And many young people at the time entered into journalism schools hoping to get their own Watergate story of their own. And because of their stories, it left an inkling of cynicism in the American public's eye about their government. And without them, Nixon may have got away with the scandal. Though Bernstein and Woodward will never admit that they made any changes and have dismissed the idea that they purposely targeted the Republican Party in any way. They also dismissed the idea that the GOP puts upon them that because of their stories, elections for Republicans was down the next election year. The target of the story was Nixon and his aides, for they broke the law, and even though Nixon did not directly have any influence in the scandal, he was involved in covering it up, which put him in a harsher light than he would have if he didn't. They still had a lasting impact by standing up for what's right, and without them, Watergate would have never been discovered.